Namaste. My salutations to all of you. Today is our 18th session. This class is based upon the book, The First Step into Bhagavad Gita. There are mainly three topics covered in this particular course. The first one is the foundations required for a meaningful study of the Bhagavad Gita, which we completed. And after that, we did a quick analysis of the Gita Dhyana Shlokas, the 9 Shlokas. In fact, not a quick, we went Shlokas by Shlokas and we tried to unfold as much as possible. And right now, we are discussing the chapter 1. And as of last session, we covered up to Shloka 27. We are planning to cover 28 to 31. So let's just do a quick recap, and from there we can jump into the shlokas. There is no point in rushing. We will take some time and go shlokas by shlokas. So when you look at chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita, please keep in mind that the chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita is the problem statement using a particular context. Please try to understand that the context in which the Mahabharata war, the context of the Mahabharata war has no significance in our life. But the problem addressed through the context of Mahabharata, it has significance in our life. So the Bhagavad Gita's problem statement is explained using the context of a civil war happened in ancient India, the Mahabharata war, the war fought between Kauravas and Pandavas. But we try to understand the fact that there is a war that is happening always in our mind, the battle within. That is what our predominant focus is. And the same problem Arjuna faced can manifest in different ways in our life also. So it's very important for us to understand what exactly is the problem Gita is trying to address and relate that with our life. It is very important. Otherwise, we may not be able to follow the Gita properly. So what we have seen so far is the Gita opens up with a verse by Dhritarashtra, the blind old king, asking his faithful minister or the charioteer Sanjaya to report what is happening in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The Dhritarashtra is blind, he cannot see, and that is why he is dependent upon his charioteer Sanjaya, faithful charioteer Sanjaya, to give a narration what is happening in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So Sanjaya, after observing the battlefield, he said that both the armies were ready, assembled there, and he talked about a conversation between Duryodhana and Drona, where both the key people of both armies were enumerated, and then he started the initiation of the war. But because the Bhishma, the commander-in-chief of the Kaurava army, started blowing his conch, and the Pandava forces responded, and the battle is about to begin. At that time, Krishna and Arjuna of the Pandava side was brilliantly introduced, and Arjuna, the hero of the Pandava army, the most capable person of the Pandava army, he asked Bhagavan Krishna to place the chariot between the armies so that he can see who are all assembled there to fight. And Krishna, in the last week, what we have seen is Krishna placed this chariot between the two armies and asked Arjuna, please see who are all assembled here to fight. That's where we saw. So let's continue from there. Let's just listen to what we learned last week and we can continue.
Sanjaya uvacha evamukto hrishikeshaha gudakeshena bharata senayorubhayor madhye sthapayitva radhotamam भीष्मद्रोणप्रमुखतः सर्वेषां च महीक्षिताम् उवाच पार्थ पश्यैतान् समवेतान् कुरूनिति तत्रापश्यत् स्थितान् पार्थः पितॄनथ पितामहान् आचार्यान् मातुलान् भ्रातॄन् पुत्रान् पौत्रान् सखींस्तथा श्वशुरान् सुहृदश्चैव सेनयोरुभयोरपि तान् समीक्ष्य स कौन्तेयः सर्वान् बन्धूनवस्थितान्.
Brilliantly painted by Vyasa, Krishna placed the chariot between the two armies and just said only one sentence in the entire first chapter. Please see who are all assembled here. And Arjuna started looking at who are all assembled. And that sight was very disturbing because it's a civil war. So the people assembled here, there, everybody is a relative, a family member, or a friend. So he saw the grandfathers, the friends, the brothers, and the children, and that sight was very much disturbing. That is where we left in the previous session. So please understand this point. When you look at this subjectively, what happens? Arjuna represents the self-control in us. The self-control can annihilate or control any destructive emotions, attachments, or thoughts in our mind. When the self-control is ready to charge, he is just observing what are all the tendencies or the emotions or the feelings I need to control. And that sight was pretty much disturbing. Imagine the self-control looks at what exactly needs to be controlled. My passion for junk food, or my addiction for another thing, or my blind attachment for something else, or my hard desire to cut corners. Because these thoughts, these emotions, and these things are valuable for me. I believe that my life may not be fulfilled. My life may not be complete without that junk food, or without doing that drink, or without doing that gambling. My life may not be complete. And what I'm trying to control is so dear to me. And it is very hard for me to control. This is what the sight. And that is why we make New Year resolution and we break the New Year resolution. That is why we determine tomorrow onwards I'm going to do the exercise, and when that alarm rings, I just stop the alarm. Because what I'm trying to control is so dear to me. I feel that my personality or my life is not complete without those. So it's not that the war is a straightforward. I always used to say the war Arjuna was fighting is not with an invader. If that war was fought with an invader, it was very easy for Arjuna. Also the self-control in us, what I need to control, where I need to get disciplined is not easy. What I am trying to avoid is so dear to me. It is not easy for me to control. That is what the sight we saw, Arjuna's sight was. And now we jump into the next set of shlokas. Let's try to see that. So this is the basic problem of meaning addressed by the Bhagavad Gita. The psychology of the Bhagavad Gita is formulated with these principles: Raga, Shoka, and Moha. So please keep this in mind always when you study the first chapter. What exactly is the fundamental problem or the problem statement addressed by the first chapter? We all have extreme attachment or the binding attachment. For example, I would like to have that junk food, or I am pretty much emotionally dependent upon a particular person or a particular object or a particular situation. That is the problem. And then what is going to happen? This creates psychological obsession or dependency. And this is what is called raga. Raga by themselves is okay, but the binding attachment by themselves, it's okay. Everybody is attached to something. Everybody has some preferences. That is okay. But the problem is what? This binding attachment. If something is happening between me and that particular outcome, if that going to create a psychological obsession, or if that particular object is creating a psychological dependency in me, that is a problem. So that is raga. And then what is going to happen? Anything that happens to that particular obsession, it is going to create an emotional response. Lack of emotional intelligence. I behave in a way contrary to my knowledge and wisdom. A simple example, we don't need to go take complicated examples in life. I know that eating sugar is not good for me, but when I see that basket of sweets, basket of chocolates, or basket of mithai, I cannot control. This is the lack of emotional intelligence. Intellectually, I know that eating sugar is not good. Already my A1C is high. So why, in spite of my knowledge, I compromise? I think, okay, today I'm going to eat. And tomorrow also, I think tomorrow I'm going to eat. I know that I need to get up and exercise, but my addiction, attachment to the sleep, or that laziness is so high that it creates that lack of emotional intelligence in me. Emotional response is very high. So raga is leading to shoka. So binding attachment leading to lack of emotional intelligence. And when I don't have emotional intelligence, what is going to have? Moha, delusion. I don't know what I'm doing. I may do something which is exactly opposite what I need to do. This is the problem. This is what is happening. So Arjuna also had that binding attachment with people, with situations, and with certain outcomes. And when he was facing a challenge, what is going to happen? Because of this binding attachment, he's lost his emotional intelligence. The emotions were overwhelming. And as a result, what happened? It created delusion in him. So the problem here is, I tried to explain this last week, both of us, Avanti and I tried to explain this many times. The problem is that the problem is not to fight the war or fight the war. The problem is when you make a decision, that decision has to come from a strong mind. That decision has to come from a controlled mind. It's not emotionally overwhelmed and make a response. That is the problem. So, what Krishna is trying to do through the counseling or through the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita is to give us that mindset or that frame of mind where I can make the right decision based on dharma. That's all. The fighting if, meaning that is very important. That is why Bhagavad Gita is not a war mongering textbook. It is a book that helps us to make the right decision. So this is very important to understand. So let's continue. So let's listen to the next set of verses.
कृपया परया विष्टः विषीदन्निदमब्रवीत् अर्जुन उवाच दृष्ट्वेमं स्वजनं कृष्ण युयुत्सुं समुपस्थितं सीदन्ति मम गात्राणि मुखं च परिशुष्यति वेपधुश्च शरीरे मे रोमहर्षश्च जायते गाण्डीवं स्रंसते हस्तात् त्वक्चैव परिदह्यते न च शक्नोम्यवस्थातुं भ्रमतीव च मे मनः निमित्तानि च पश्यामि विपरीतानि केशव न च श्रेयोनुपश्यामि हत्वा स्वजनमाहवे.
This is a brilliant word painting of Arjuna's situation. And through the Arjuna situation, Vyasa is brilliantly painting the picture of a person who is caught by the problem of samsara. You already talked about that. Raga leading to shoka and shoka leading to moha. Binding attachment or psychology, emotional means emotional dependency or psychological obsession leading to emotional overwhelming or lack of emotional intelligence. And from that lack of emotional intelligence, the delusion. at that point of time, in that crisis, when you are emotionally overwhelmed, what exactly you feel, that is what is Arjuna is expressing. So remember the context. Arjuna saw the whole people, the relatives standing there to fight each other. And at that point of time, what comes out of his mind, that emotional response, is brilliantly explained by this set of shlokas. So he tells, Kripaya paraya vishtaha vishidantam idam abravid. So kripa literally means compassion. So here it is not literally the compassion to people. Here it is the emotional overwhelming. That is what we need to understand. So he was completely overtaken by the emotions. And at that point of time, he was felt extremely sad. So there is a huge emotional surge, and from that emotional surge, he became sad. And from that, with that sadness, Arjuna Uvaja, he said. So, what type of Arjuna? The Arjuna who is impacted by the emotional surge, and as a result, he became very sad. And from that sadness, he said, having seen these people, and who are those people? Sojanam, my own people. Arjuna tells, having seen my own people assembled here to wage a war, O Krishna, Yuyutsum Samupasthitam. Why did they assemble? They didn't assemble there to have some fun or having a party. They assembled here for a civil war. So the people, my own people, assembled here for a civil war. Having seen them, actually, I am very sad. Arjuna said. So what exactly the how that sadness is expressed in his system, the body. My body is shivering. Mama Gatrani, my body is shivering. So my body is shivering, and Mukham cha parishushyati, mouth getting dried. I'm getting a dry mouth. See, look at this. These are typical textbook symptoms of such a situation, anxiety and depression. Then what happened? So, Sidan epatuscha sharire me romaharshasya jayate. Body, I tremble, and my hair stands up. The body hair stands up. Then what happened? So, Vepatuscha sharire me romaharshasya jayate gandivam shramsate hasta tok dahya parishusyate. My instrument of action, he was carrying the bow gun in his hand. That is falling down from my hand. And tok dahya, my skin is burning. I feel that my skin seems to be burning. These are the symptoms of the emotions, how it manifests in the body, right? So, Sidanti mama gatrani mukham cha parishusyati vepatuscha sharire me romaharshasya jayate gandivam shramsate hasta tokchaiva paridahyate nachas shaktona mahatvaham pramativa cha me manaha Nimittani cha pashyami. I cannot stand firm because I'm feeling so tired. All these situation has impacted. Pramativa cha me manaha. My mind, head seems to be spinning. Look at this brilliancy, right? My head seems to be spinning. And what happened? Pramativa cha me manaha nimittani cha pashyami. And wherever I look, I see only bad omens, right? So this is typically happens to people when they are under certain situation. The moment they look at the calendar, they see only 13, and all these they will see the black cats, all different types of bad omens. That's what only you see in that condition. So Arjuna, see what is nature is showing me is bad omens. So nimittani cha pashyami viparitani keshava nacha shreyonu pashyami hatva sojana madhavi. So that is what he said. I don't see nacha shreyo, I don't see any merit, any value in fighting or killing with my own people in this battle. And that is what it's nacha shreyonu haptvami hatva sojana madhavi. So this is what Arjuna said. So these shlokas brilliantly paints the expression of Arjuna after seeing his own people in the battlefield. So let's little bit deep dive into each of these topics. So this is Arjuna's crisis. So this reflects the struggle of a human being with raga, binding attachment, and dvesha, binding aversions. This is exactly what the word painting. And it paints that emotional storm, like what needs to be done versus what feels to be done. And the raga and dvesha leading to shoka, emotional crisis, and leading to moha, delusion. This is what happens. And this is the internal conflict happens in the mind of every human being at any situation. See, the thing is that imagine your mind is the best instrument for you to face any situation. You need to have your mind in your hand. Otherwise, you cannot do your best. Let's say that you are playing a game of sports like football or cricket. Player needs to have that mind 100% in his hand, focused on the task, nothing but focused on the task. Then only he can execute the task to the best of his ability. But if he is attached by the result, okay, this is what if I fail, what is going to happen? He will not be able to put his best in that action. And that is why meaning even a slight disturbances of the mind can affect my performance. And imagine if I'm completely distressed and if I'm completely emotionally overwhelmed, what I face perplexed in front of the situation. Swami Chinmayananda used to brilliantly paint this picture with a few sentences. He used to say that we needs to be masters of the situation. But what happens? Situations becomes master and we become a victim of the situation. How can I transform from being a victim of the situation? And how can I transform myself into a master of the situation? That is what is illustrated through the story of Arjuna. That is what is illustrated through the life lessons given by the Bhagavad Gita. So right now, we see Arjuna and each one of us through that Arjuna as a victim of the situation. We may have skills, we may have tool sets, we may have everything in our hand to live our life effectively, to face the problems in front of us effectively. But what happens when I face the situation? The situational pressure overwhelms my mind and begin that emotional surge. I don't know what needs to do. This is called lack of emotional intelligence. And this is once upon a time, we all believed that IQ is the only factor that determines the success of a person in his life. But in the last 20-25 years, we know that IQ is just one. If you really look at the high performers around the world, we see that along with IQ, there is another factor which is called emotional intelligence, the ability to understand and manage your emotions, using your emotions wisely. That is what is the key factor for success. And that is what is illustrated by the story of Arjuna. So this is not something that you can read and go and sympathize with Arjuna and go away. No, this is try to connect that Arjuna within myself. Try to find that Arjuna within myself. Then only the Gita makes sense for us. Let's go to the subjective aspect of it. So self-control is what Arjuna represents. So what happens? The self-control recognize that the destructive emotions or the atharmic thoughts it needs to control is part of our personality. And as we explained earlier, they are so dear and near to me. They are part of my larger family. They are integral part of my personality. The sedentary food, the drink, or everything else is integral part of me. And the self-control concludes that life without these sense pleasures are meaningless. Life without these, the attachment and the push and pull for these objects are meaningless. And think of that. This is exactly what is happening with each one of us every day. So this is dilemma of Arjuna is what is painted. what exactly these impact our bodies. This is brilliantly painted by Vyasa. These extreme emotional response, how that manifests in our body. Romaharshasya jayate, gantivam sramsate tatta, tokchaiva pariduhyate. This is brilliantly explained. Just see what exactly Arjuna was talking. He said, my body is shivering. I have dry mouth, burning sensation in the skin. I cannot stand up properly. My mind is spinning. Hair stands up. Look at the modern textbook of symptoms of that anxiety and depression. This is exactly what you see. These are brilliant explanation of a person who is facing mental distress and how it impacts on our body and the mind. I am not able to use the tools available to me. Like, there are so many things available to me for facing my life problems, but I cannot use them. And I see bad omens anywhere. I don't see any value in my life. I feel that everything I do, it's going in the other direction. So, this is all the projections of the mind. And what is the result? What are the results it could be? What we feel helpless and hopeless. When we face a situation, we feel helpless and hopeless because of this type of reaction. And we feel that, okay, nothing will improve. This is how the life is. If you have faced that type of problems, this is Arjuna is in loss of interest. You may discontinue the hobbies, the pastimes, social activities. All these things are the extreme reaction of this mental distress. Appetite or weight loss changes, notable weight fluctuations. You can see that like exceeding body weight or reducing, meaning within a month, that happens. Altered sleep pattern is another response, like insomnia or hypersomnia, oversleep or lack of sleep. Can happen when you have that emotional distress, increased anger and irritability. Like you can see the agitation and restlessness, low tolerance, short temper affecting the interactions. This will break relationship. This will make you isolated. And see, this is the problem. This is kind of a chain reaction. When it happens, it keeps you further isolated from the world and the people around and the support system around you. Like, this is the problem. These are behavioral symptoms of the psychological stress as per the modern science. And this is exactly what is happening with Arjuna. More. And what is the result? Loss of energy. You feel fatigue and you feel that everything seems to be overwhelming. And remember, Arjuna said, I cannot even stand up. Self-loathing, like intense feeling of worthlessness, guilt, or other emotions. This is self-criticism. All these things will happen. Reckless behavior. You feel engaged in risky activities. Reckless driving. All these things happen because of this mental situation. Concentration problem. Difficulty in focus, making decisions, or retaining information. This is affecting you in every dimension of your personality. Unexpected aches and pains in the body, these things can happen. These are some of the textbook symptoms of the mental distress, the Arjuna's problem. And this is what is addressed by the Gita. And what is the conclusion the self control is making? I don't need to gain control over the body, emotions, and thoughts, and demands of the sense organs and craving of the mind. This is essentially what Arjuna is concluding here. Let me pause here and let me request Avanti to add her thought. But before that, just a conclusion. Reflect these set of shlokas. They are brilliant. The relevance of these shlokas are believable. How Vyasa painted this picture of Arjuna's state. And through Arjuna's states, our own states. So Avanti, please add your thought.
Namaskar. So because it's at the top of my head, the emotional quotient that Rajesh was just speaking about, that yes, it's good to have a great IQ. I read something quite interesting this morning, which says, if a child can do advanced math, speak 3 languages, or receive top grades, but cannot manage their emotions, practice conflict resolution, or handle stress, none of that other stuff is really going to matter. And that is the fact of life, whether it is for a child or for an adult. We see the most successful people, let's take, for example, celebrities, that they make it to the very top with great talent, great passion, very, very hard work. But at the end of the day, because they are not able to get a control of the mind and they have no emotional quotient, they ruin it all. And on the other hand, we see people who are, completely overwhelmed with the most excruciating circumstances that you and I wouldn't even think about. And with a very strong resilience, which comes from a strong emotional quotient to be able to see the best in life and to make whatever one can from whatever is available. Uh, we've seen people rise up and really get their lives together. So at the end of the day, intelligence as we see it, of acquiring, learning, studying, really doesn't matter as much as the ability to hold it together and employ that intelligence to achieve everything. Having said that, I'll just go down quickly from all the verses we've discussed. 28 and 29, rightly said, Rajesh, most beautifully portrayed the state of not just Arjuna, but of every human being when faced with a problem that the mind is not able to tackle. See, I've been counseling for many, many years. And one thing that I have noticed is that when people go through very heavy emotional trauma, because they can't really access the mind, they suppress that trauma or they don't address it. Even if they're not suppressing it, they don't know how to tackle it. But that trauma is being felt internally. And for it to be uh, acknowledged, it's almost like a inbuilt system that which is not addressed intellectually, mentally, simmers down and manifests as dis-ease within the body. Literally, you start feeling uneasy in the body. And why is it that we are more comfortable with physical symptoms, even if they become terminal diseases? Is because we can address it. We can address problems in our body. But how do we address problems in the mind? Till very recently, mental health was a taboo subject, especially from the region. I understand most of us in this group at least come from India. So it was something that you wouldn't even talk about. I mean, only mad people had mental problems. Regular people never had any mental issues. But now, when we see the spectrum of what mental disorders are, from the mildest to the most intense, all of us seem to have it, especially in this day and age. So, one thing we have to understand that I've learned this in Reiki, I've learned this in psychology, is that I've learned this in energy medicine, that almost all physical disturbances start at the level of the mind. That is what pranic healers do. That is what Reiki healers do. They try to clear it off in the energetic body. So always the subtle dictates the gross. It's never that the gross dictates the subtle. See, when you are in a very, very grave situation where you have to do something important, and just at that time you get a severe migraine, or you get like severe tummy ache, or something happens to you mentally, physically, how many times have we been able to just hold that whatever our problem is and focus on what needs to be done? And very cleverly we call it mind over matter. That is also what placebo medicine works on, right? It's been successful. Even placebo operations are being done worldwide, where somebody is consistently complaining about some physical problem, and the doctor is not able to find anything. So then the doctor says, oh, well, okay, there is something wrong with you, let's operate. And they take him in for, or her in for some, operation that really doesn't happen. But the patient believes that he's been operated or she's been operated, and they become better. Same thing, it has been proven psychologically in psychological journals of medicine that if a person is told, oh, you're in remission, even if he's not, talk about cancer and stuff, he actually starts getting into remission. And if a person is told that, oh, the cancer seems to be coming back, within minutes, within days, within hours, he plunges down. So what we are trying to understand over here is that the mind And the intellect is way, way stronger than the grossest aspect of our personality, which is the body. So if we have both of these together, then we are able to control and direct the body. So verse 28 and 29, which describes all these symptoms, how many times we have, what are the symptoms that he's saying? Limbs failing. How many times we feel weak in the knees when we are faced with some very big emotional trauma? How many times we are so dry mouthed that we can't speak with overwhelming emotions? How many times we tremble in our knees? Knee knocking is so, it happens even if you have to go and public speak in front of a podium. And how many times we have horripilations? We are in just shock and awe. So this is not Arjuna on a battlefield. This is our daily life. We are facing these symptoms. And then when we move to verse, so what this is called, this entire thing is basically called psychoneurosis. That when something goes wrong in psychologically, mentally, immediately it causes neurosis that translates down into the body. And we, in small and big ways, are rendered actionless. We are not able to function. We become hapless, helpless. Now, when we move to verse 30, in verse 30, when he's talking about that Gandivam, you know, uh, that it's falling off, the Gandiva is falling off. Rajeshji has already mentioned that it is the instrument of action. So what we are trying to say over here, explain over here, is that when the body yields to absolute mental pressure, then action cannot be done. It cannot be performed at all. And verse 30 actually has two messages. First and foremost is that when it comes to facing our own personal problems, we have no knowledge, we have no wisdoms. If the same thing happens to a neighbor, we will stand there as long, big judges and juries and say, oh, you must do this, you must do that, you must do that, you must do this. Imagine the stature of Arjuna, what a warrior he is. And he's come down to saying, my mouth is dry and my body is trembling and my limbs are failing on the battlefield, which is his playground. A battlefield for a warrior, a Kshatriya of the caliber of Arjuna, it's a playground. It's like hunting, how people go out for hunting. It's literally like that. Baye haath ka khel, as we say in Hindi. You don't even have to do it with your dominant hand. You can do it with his non-dominant hand and still win. So for him to come down to this, it is because he has faced his own problems. So this also we have to understand, that when we start lecturing others, it's a very good practice. Yes, we must lecture everybody else. But when we are lecturing others, we must always keep it at the back of our mind that this could happen to me. When we go to meet somebody in the hospital and we are seeing somebody lying down on the bed, we will give them long lectures. This treatment is fabulous. This is remember before you speak, this could happen to me. And while you're lecturing, try and let that lecture go into your own mind that God forbid something like that happens to you. You are not rendered helpless and hapless. You are able to face it squarely. My teacher gave us a very beautiful contemplation, when we were doing the Vedanta course. He said, always think of this scenario. Don't become obsessive about it because you become pessimistic. But think about this scenario that suppose if you had a very dear pen, like maybe your child gave it to you, Mother's Day, Father's Day, whatever it is, and you treasured it with all your heart, it became your good luck charm or whatever, and that pen gets lost. How disturbed are you going to feel? How, disoriented you are going to become. ठीक है, pen. You bought a new car. That car, now when you buy a new car, you have to understand it can be dented, it can be scratched, it can be meet with an accident, whatever. If you buy a new car, if it meets with a horrible accident or if it is stolen, how disturbed will you be? Okay, car, theek hai. You have this fabulous house and insurance has just to be renewed and you've missed a day. Next day you're going to reinsure the house and one day is in between. And on that day, the house catches fire, God forbid. How disturbed are you going to be? No insurance also. Think about these things. Okay, house is also fine, dispensable. It's a commodity. Your own family members, your children, your wife, your husband, God forbid, meets with a severe accident or something happens. How disturbed are you going to be? And last of all, you yourself are facing death. You yourself are being told that you have some terminal illness and that's it. how disturbed are you going to be? This is not pessimism. This is actually becoming a philosopher. When time to time we think about these things and we put this knowledge into that thinking process, we become prepared, because we have to understand that none of us in this group or outside of it are exempt for any of these problems to happen to us. And spiritual growth is that where we can stand in the face of each problem and face it squarely. Our own problems, not somebody else's problem. So somebody else's problems to go and console is excellent, because it should become a practice to console ourselves. Everything we tell others should be in our head to tell ourselves when we face it. So that is number one. Number two, what we learn from this thing is that we've already seen the mental agitation incapacitates the physical body. When you cannot think properly, clearly, you cannot act. And thinking is forever clouded by emotions. I'll give you one simple example. Suppose if we put a plank on the road, on the floor, I put maybe a 6 foot wide plank. I put it, okay? Just put it on the ground. And I say, come on, let's one by one walk across on top of that plank. Laughing, you'll say, what a strange thing. Let's go. One by one, easily all of us will go. Nothing will happen. Thinking is clear. There's no emotion involved. Nothing. Now that same plank, I put in between two buildings that are 30-story high. Nothing in between, nothing to catch you below. And I say walk. So easily you walked on the ground when it was fully supported. But here, when we start to walk, first and foremost, we look down and we see that fear of falling down. And God forbid, if you have fear of heights or anything, you will not be able to cross that thing, that plank. Why? Because the fear of falling down, getting hurt, worse, dying. So we have to see always that whenever any emotion comes into our thinking, we are paralyzed to act. That is why those famous things, right from school days, we've been told. If you get angry, breathe. If you get angry, count to 5. Why do we do these pauses? Just to allow the emotions to settle. And that is a necessary pause that Krishna is giving Arjuna to just vomit out whatever he's feeling. And Krishna doesn't speak a word. He's just holding space for this guy to get everything out. And then to start understanding of how silly he's been in his arguments. So basically, of verse 28, 29, 30, the main message is that you need a strong intellect to control the emotions of the mind, to channel the emotions of the mind. Emotions are not bad. I've said that before. Some of the best things that I have done in my life have been backed by the most passionate emotions, I can say. And similarly, some of the worst things I've done have also been backed by emotions. So emotions, if you translate it into its root word, it is a mover, the primary mover. It moves, to emote, to move us. So all we need to do is to have a strong enough intellect to be able to move us in the right direction. So that is very important. And 31. What is he doing in 31? He's talking about bad omens. Now, this superstition has been one of Indians' biggest bane. It's really incapacitated us on such a large scale that it is unbelievable. And generally, we will see that superstitious beliefs have made us fall into a passive, almost you can say lackadaisical laziness of sorts. And we take refuge in superstition. We don't. So what is, see, when we take refuge in superstition, what happens? We don't take responsibility on ourselves. It's so easy to say, oh, I failed this exam because a black cat crossed my path. How about I failed this exam because I really didn't study that hard? Or I didn't get this contract because my pitch was not the best. Or I have fallen ill because I was stupid enough to eat some rubbish and, get myself into this trouble. All the time, iska muh dekha subah. That's why my day has gone bad. I've gotten down from the wrong side of the bed. A cat crossed my path. There's a joke, right? That one kid asked, one mom asked a kid, oh my God, black cat just crossed my path. What's going to happen? And the kid turns around and the mother and says, oh, the cat is going to have such a bad day. I mean, who are we that we are so great that a black cat crosses our path and our days goes bad? It may be that the black cat's days go bad because we has crossed our path, right? So just the ability to think. See, many of our superstitions and many of our these archaic beliefs of olden days do have some sort of a scientific explanation. Like a question was raised in the Q&A, like, is it okay to read the Bhagavad Gita while menstruating? So there are certain things that have a scientific reason, but you have to have an intellect to discern whether those reasons fit in the modern context. There's this, I'll end with this wonderful story joke that Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda had told in one of his lectures, which fits so well in this verse, is that there was a family, okay, a South Indian family, and they were going to have a very big puja. They were going to have a big prayer ceremony, Havan. They were going to have a Havan. And everything was ready and all that. And then suddenly, last minute, the lady of the house comes running and says, oh my God, the cat is not there. The cat has not been arranged. The cat has not been arranged. And the whole house goes berserk. Muhurt jata raha hai. The muhurt of that thing is going. And she's running around and all that. And everybody starts running around. Oh my God, the cat, the cat, the cat, the cat. And they spend like a good portion of the morning in a lot of stress trying to find the cat. And then finally, somebody finds the cat and all that, brings it to the Havan, puts it at the corner, places a basket, a cane basket on the cat so that it can breathe. And then they say, Acha, now you can start the Havan. So they begin the Havan and all that. And there was this little boy who gets so curious and he's like, what was the point of that cat? I mean, I thought that the cat maybe had to be put in the fire or something or whatever. It's so strange, why did they do all that? The cat just sat under that basket till the Havan was over and then they let the cat go. It didn't make sense at all. So then he decided to find out, what is the story? Why do they put? So he asked everybody, he asked the mother, what is the significance of this cat? The mother says, no, I don't know and all that. It's been like that in our tradition. Ask the father, ask the grandfather, ask everybody, and everybody saying, no, don't say this and all. This is our tradition. This is how it has to be done. In the end, this kid goes to an old man somewhere, who was in the village. And he says, I don't understand. I'm so irritated with this that, why did they go and get that cat? It had no significance with the Havan. The cat didn't do anything in the Havan and all. And this old man starts laughing loudly. So the child was like, why are you laughing? He's saying, did they really do that? So he's saying, yeah, they spent the whole morning looking all around the village for a cat. Then they brought a cat and put it underneath that basket. He laughed so much. He said, you know what? Many generations ago, your family, the ancestors of your family had a cat. And that cat was very mischievous. And every single puja that the family used to do, this cat used to come and, destroy everything and, really destroy the whole puja setup and all that. So to keep that cat under control, that family, their own cat, they used to keep him under a cane basket, how we leash a dog. And that was it. Once the puja was over, they used to let it go. So the whole thing was that somebody in the family observed that this cat was being put under the basket, and they thought this is a family tradition that no Havan can take place without a cat being placed under the basket. And they continued that madness right till this generation, until this boy went to find out what is the story of the cat. And if you really go to investigate some of your own beliefs, if especially you come from very traditional orthodox backgrounds, you laugh out loud as to why something was being done and why you're still carrying it out. So this superstitious belief becomes a very big impediment in our life. Number one, because we carry on mindlessly taking our focus from what needs to be done to what used to be done, not understanding why it used to be done, number one. And number two, it is our easiest excuse to not take responsibility. Over here, Arjuna doesn't want to take the responsibility of fighting this war and killing these people. So the easiest thing is, you know what? See, I can see bad omens. I will not fight this war. I will not. And how convenient we are. Actually, when Duryodhana was born, you all know the story of how Duryodhana was born. In fact, all the Kauravas just came as one big black piece of flesh, ugly looking flesh out of Gandhari's womb. And when that flesh came out, a child didn't come out. One big whole chunk of flesh came out, black. When that flesh came out, that time Vyasa warned that this is ominous, this is a bad omen, destroy it, bury it, or whatever advice he gave. That time we didn't decide to look at the omens. That time nobody decided to look at the omens. Oh, it's ominous. So badly they wanted those children that they said to hell with those omens, which were actually really bad omens. And they went ahead and produced those 100 Kauravas. Whereas here, when Arjuna has to fight a legitimate war and win it to re-establish righteousness, he is trying to find refuge in bad omens to escape that responsibility of killing his own people and winning this war. And one last thing I would like to bring your attention to, the beginning of this whole discussion that we've had, is where he uses this word swajanam. He tells Krishna, I am seeing swajanam, my own kinsman. So there itself he fails, because what does a warrior who is out there to fight a righteous war have to see? Only warriors. Whoever is standing on the opposite side of the battlefield, whoever is in the enemy lines, will only be a warrior to a warrior. There's no question of my loved one and my swajanam and my kinsman. He fails there. To defend that swajanam, all this nonsense, this psychoneurosis, this paralysis of the body, this starting to see ominous omens and all that, is all an excuse to defend the fact that that swajanam should not be disturbed. The next, what he says, is even more ridiculous, which we will see, I guess, next week.
So the true battle is fought not upon the field of Kurukshetra, but in the unfathomable depth of our minds, where fear and courage fight for dominance under the floodlight of consciousness. So essentially, the point is that these wars are happening not outside, but internal. So that concludes the topic, and you can see the modern neurology has given a lot of insights into these thinking. Couple of books for your reference, like The Power of Mind Over the Body. There is a beautiful book called Mind Over Medicine by Dr. Lisa Rankin. That talks about how the thinking in your mind can impact your body with a lot of evidences, a lot of clinically tested evidences. That's one book to refer.